Hi, I'm Kat.
I'm Arden 13.
Welcome to our show, World Tiger.
Building Dragon.
Today we are continuing with some of World Anvil's summer camp prompts.
Summer Camp is a program set up by the World Anvil team to promote world building as well as the community in general.
There'll be a total of 33 prompts all throughout the month of July, so if you're looking to win some prizes for your submissions, don't miss out.
World Anvil is a free in-browser tool that has everything that a world builder or a GM may ever need.
They also have some really incredible subscription options, so go check those out as well.
It's totally worth it. They're totally affordable. If you're interested, please go check them out. But in any case, I think it's time we got to the prompt. Kat, what is our prompt?
Today we get to write about a specialized military unit in our world. I'm excited.
I'm super excited. I have an idea.
Awesome.
Oh, this is gonna be great. But for you guys at home that may not be sure what exactly we're doing, Kat and I have given ourselves some parameters in order to complete this project. Each of us has 30 minutes to answer the prompt.
Each of our submissions have to be at minimum 300 words.
After the 300 words and our 30 minutes are up, we're gonna come back together and share what we came up with.
Some of our best ideas have come from collaborations.
That they have. You ready for this?
Mm-hmm.
Let's do this.
Time skip!
We're back.
We're back.
I had so much fun
I
with this.
saw you writing and I could tell you had a lot of fun. It was just like kept going.
dancing. I actually think I missed when the timer went off. I think I had a thought that I wanted to get down, and I don't think I ended up getting it down. But I will try to recall it because it's fresh in my brain.
Right.
When we get to that point. Mm-hmm. But yes, I had so much fun with
Good.
this.
I'm glad. Do you want to start?
I can.
Go for it.
If you don't mind.
Go for it.
So with everything that I have to explain in this series is there's a little bit of a story that goes along here. So the organization that I did, we had to talk about a military unit, an elite military unit. So I did mine over this group called the Dust Knights. The Dust Knights, or Dust, are an organization, an order of warrior monks from a region called the Cape of Ross.
I also did something about warrior monks.
There we go!
Okay, what did yours do?
Well, my allusion to the warrior monks is more or less the Deus Vult Crusaders of the Holy Land.
Okay.
Is the warrior monks in which I'm making reference to here. So the Dust Knights, the Cape of Ross, is iconically south of a territory known as the Nocturna Coast. Excuse me, voice crack. The Nocturna Coast, which is home to sovereign vampire nations. Everyone knows this. Where the Cape of Ross is home to the Dust Elves, or the Grey Elves, who escaped enslavement from these vampiric overlords centuries ago. And the story goes, this is not just the story, this is actual, I wrote this here. How this order began in its history is that when the Dust Elves rebelled and revolted, they went south. They went south into the Cape, and as the vampire forces, as the forces of the night were closing in on them, a very small handful of brave and some even thought foolish warriors basically stood at the tree line of the great Sveiluks forest, which is the forest that went down in that area, down into the Cape, with torches in their hand. And when they realized, when they knew and they saw that all of the vampiric forces, the majority of them, had entered into the wood, they set the forest to the torch and burned the entire forest a good 60-70 miles all the way up to the border of what is now the border between the Cape of Ross and the Nocturna Coast. And yes, all the forces that were in those woods died, burned alive. And when the dust began to settle and clear, it is noted that the prosecutors of the vampiric forces looked out over the ashes and the dust that had been kicked up, and all they saw were these knights standing caked in the dust with their great swords and torches saying, "Come and get us." Needless to say, Ed has not been... They haven't really come to get them yet. It's been a while. So that is kind of the story of the Dust Knights. The order is referred to as Dust, so this would be the document about the knights themselves, and then there's another article about the organization of Dust. But the way that it is set up is that their numbers rank in the thousands, and it is a holy order, so they take the oath for life. So generally, they don't have a lot of children, but they do have a lot of young men and women who have sworn themselves to be trained to become members of the order. When they actually get into the structure of their platoon themselves, it's very much like a family dynamic. There is a matron, there is a patron, and there is also, at the very head of the organization, is a Grand Master, very similar to the Knights Templar. That's kind of how they break that down. In terms of their armor and the way that they look, is that they all wear these ashen gray tabards that cover a chainmail shirt that swoops down. Think, if you take the image of a crusader from the Middle Ages and then just like grayscale it and replace the cross with a fanged skull engulfed in flames, that's basically what you're looking at. Perfect. Here. Also, they're gray elves, so they have a little bit of a kind of very, I don't want to say uncivilized by any stretch of the imagination, because they are extremely civilized, but they have adopted more of a Native American aesthetic in terms of their hairstyling and the way that they perceive themselves with certain like piercings and face markings.
So like, I think I know what you're saying as far as
they like shave their heads. They to like just mohawks. They have like, you know, few braids.
Oh, got it. Okay.
So I'm sorry. That's more or less what I'm getting at here. So those are like poking out of their, you know, can helmets and so forth, as well as the aesthetic of feathers thrown in and furs here and there. But the Order of Dust doesn't really deal a whole lot in the furs and the feather aesthetic. Many will put feathers in their helmets as like an extra thing, so the headdresses are just extravagant at times or very simplistic. It kind of just depends on the knight that you're dealing with. But it should also be stated that these are an order of vampire hunters, but it moves away from the idea of Van Helsing, and I kind of make an allusion to Van Helsing here, where they're like clad in leather armor and they're very dynamic and moving and very mobile and so forth. These guys are in chainmail. They carry, and their weapons, they don't have a whole lot of weapons that they carry on them. Usually they only carry one, and I'll get to that in a second. But their utility belts, quote unquote, are often filled with components and materials specifically for fighting vampires and their brood. But they're very stationary.
Right.
They're very stalwart, and like, you can move around me as much as you want. I'm going to hit you.
Once I get a hit in, it's over.
And that is actually an excellent segue into their weapon. Their weapon of choice, as the ancient warriors of old, is a greatsword. But it is very much like a claymore-like greatsword. So I have it detailed here that the weapon actually stands the blade of it stands 2/3 their height. The handle, hilt to pommel, taking up the remaining third. These blades are always forged to be as tall as they are.
Dang.
But I do go into detail talking about how the crossguard, which is relatively wide in comparison to your average crossguard, more Western European style crossguards, it is about 2 hands lower on the blade than like being butted up right against the blade. So in this way, the idea is that they can switch up their hand grip, very similar to a claymore, and have a hand right up on the blade itself, like over the crossguard, and then have one all the way down at the pommel for more leverage. But also the idea that I had there was the fact that the counterweight, the pommel of the blade itself, is also rather hefty because it's a heavy blade.
Mm-hmm.
They can swing the blade around, so the blade is actually like pointed down, and they're using this extended kind of grip. Excuse me. I'm getting too excited. I'm not breathing. I'm not breathing, so I'm like getting hiccups. Basically, they can just use it as a club. They can swing it around. They have a slashing weapon, which is what most people are afraid of. But then also they can swing it around and use it as a club.
Yeah.
You know, in whatever circumstances. Maybe they're just messing around, or like that was the strategic
just messing
plan.
around with a great sword,
Who
as
knows?
you do.
But the other thing, and this was the detail that I don't think I got to write in here. I did not. The blade is consecrated. The entire weapon is consecrated when it is quenched. During the forging process, it is quenched in holy water, in blessed holy water. Mm-hmm. So the entire blade, the entire piece is consecrated, hitting unholy creatures.
Yeah. Poof.
Boom! Yeah. Like just knocking people out. I thought it was interesting, another detail, and I don't want to take up too much more time, because I do believe I've kind of hit most of the points here. The other two things that I wanted to mention here was they have a part about vehicles, and I thought that was really cool, but I also thought it would be really interesting to kind of add a different spin on that. You don't, obviously in World Anvil, if you don't fill out one of the article forms, it doesn't show up in your article.
Right.
So same thing would happen with vehicles, but I threw it in here. It is a part of their pseudo-religious like doctrine to be akin to that of the initial warriors that stood against the vampires. So they don't believe in riding on horses or in chariots. They will only ever ride on a boat if they need to go somewhere that they can't access otherwise. They walk everywhere.
I mean, also thinking like there's not too many horses that can hold a knight in chainmail with a great sword. That's the knight's height.
Right.
So, I mean, it's also not really logistical.
Logistically speaking, yeah, it doesn't necessarily make sense.
But it's also a part of their ideology.
It's also a part of their ideology, and I wanted to add that in. Also, a detail, kind of banking off what you said, and that gives me another thing that I need to add in, is that they don't have scabbards to hold their weapon. They have to carry them.
Oh, gosh.
Which is another reason why there's that extended handhold. Like, they're dragging these things with them everywhere they go. I would argue that they probably have like some sort of a thing that just kind of like lets them sit it on their hip, but it's not like maybe a frog of some kind, but there is no scabbard to like strap this thing on your back.
Yeah, no.
The other detail that I wanted to mention was the tactics. They are taught to be incredibly ruthless and merciless. From their starting as a fledgling in the order, they are taught to be malicious when it comes to their enemies, and that kind of bleeds into whether it is a enemy of the knight or an enemy of their people. They don't normally get called into service for the Cape of Ross. They're not like a normal military that the Cape goes, okay, so we're going to war. You guys need
call
to
in the dust.
Call in the dust. But when they do, it is a part of their indoctrinating philosophy when you are going through your training and so on and so forth, when you're being exposed to all of their doctrine and their philosophy and so forth. They are indoctrinated to believe that anyone that opposes the Cape of Ross or invades the Cape of Ross wants to enslave them like the vampires did. So they are told to meet them at the same level of mercilessness and ruthlessness.
Wow.
They're monsters. But to hunt monsters, sometimes you have to be a monster.
I love the idea of... I love that first image that you talked about. Just like these knights walking out of the forest dust as it's like still falling down. It's just them walking... Or not walking, just standing there. And it's the... Try. See what happens. I'm begging you. Like, try.
I just burned this whole forest, you and all of your people. Do you think I'm not gonna hit you harder? So yeah, that's.
I really liked yours a lot.
I'm super excited.
You got excited.
Now I will take a step back, take a couple breaths. Hopefully I won't start hiccuping too aggressively, and I will hand this over to you. Tell me about your warrior monks.
So I obviously wrote about a group of warrior monks. Mine are based in the country of Halar, which is very... I'm still working out how to exactly word it. It's not desert, but it's definitely a hotter, drier part of Theatrim. They're called the Utagura. They are this elite force of monks that carry out. I have, for mine, yours, what I noticed just looking it over, you have larger blocks of text underneath all of your, like all the different parts. I filled out like 1 or 2 sentences in pretty much all of the parts in World Anvil just because I had vague ideas of what I wanted, but I couldn't quite write out enough in each section because I'd be like, oh yeah, and I remember I liked this part, and I'd, shuffle down and write it out. But I had this vision of a group of 8 monks just walking through a town, and there's this idea with the Utagura that when they are brought into recruitment or training, their heads are shaved, and it is this great ceremony, and in essence you grow out from once you stop, once you have exited your training and you're basically out in the world doing your own service, you don't cut your hair. Not at all. You don't cut your hair whatsoever until you are defeated in battle, you lose a member of your group, somehow you fail, then you shave your head and you're back to the monastery for more training or more whatever you need to do to redeem yourself before going back out in the world. So this idea of this group of warriors walking through with long hair and it just being like, nope, don't want to mess with them, no way, and just this, that was kind of the image that I started to work with. So
is it a part of their philosophy that they can't cut their hair unless they lose? So like, do they braid their hair? Do they just pull it back? Or they're just like, no, we're Pantera out here, right, just whipping windmills with our
No, they definitely have to tie it back. But it's not necessarily the Utagura don't really have a it's not a religion-based group. And you mentioned something about when you were writing yours about how you will have, this was like the military force aspect of it, but you need to write a whole nother article on World Anvil about like the actual organization of Dust, and I think that's what I'm gonna go with for the Utagura, because there's so much I wanted to write, but I was like, it doesn't fit into any of these categories. But they're not necessarily, they're definitely spiritual, but they're not religious based. So there's a lot of meditation, a lot of looking inward and those sorts of things. So as far as manpower, each troop works in groups of 8. Each group of 8 will have 2 members that will kind of pair off and do the same thing. So you'll have 2 medics, 2 long range, 2 short range, and 2, I couldn't find the right word for this, but they're basically the scouts, the assassins, the more quiet people that will do lower amounts of damage, but they're more the runners.
Stealth specialty,
yeah, that sort of thing. So you'll have this group of 8, and if they're out on a mission or whatever they're doing, they can split that group of 8 into a group of 4, and they'll still be balanced. They won't be losing members that way, but they still travel in groups of 8, and kind of like what you were saying, it's a family dynamic that they stay in these groups of 8 from when they leave training until death. Basically, they don't break it up. That is now their family. As far as equipment, they travel very, very light. They're taught to travel with the clothes on their back and the one weapon that they specialize in. Sometimes maybe they'll carry on a small mess kit or bedrolls, but really they're taught just to enjoy the idea of having a pillow of stone and a blanket of leaves. They are trained so that their bodies are living weapons. So hand-to-hand combat is next to none. Each member does, again, specialize in some sort of weapon. So for your long range, that can be bow and arrow, crossbow, spear, depending on how far you can throw a spear. Sling, that sort of thing. And so they will carry that weapon on them, but that's pretty much it.
That's so anime.
I know. I've had them in my head for so long, but it's that idea, but taken more into almost like a not a desert. I can't think of the right word for it. Almost like a western.
I don't mean, yeah, like definitely a western feel. I don't mean any offense.
No, of course not. I love that.
I love the idea. Western makes the most sense of just like, we're hanging out in a town. You know, it's some ramshackle, dusty town with a single road that goes down the center. At the end of the road is the town hall or whatever. And in moseys this group of this squad of 8 dudes with long hair, and you're just going,
nope.
No, I'm gonna
gone. Close up shop.
It's the classic, like, the good, the bad, and the ugly when the bad guy like walks into town or whatever, and everyone's closing their shutters.
Like, nope. They are taught to be, versus where the dust was more like, we're going in, no mercy, taking everything out with us, don't care. They are taught to save their skills as far as their weaponry and their hand-to-hand combat skills when necessary. So it is very much like, we're not going to try to avoid killing people if we can, mostly just, you know,
we want to prove ourselves.
And not have. They don't want to kill people. They don't think that that's the best way to go about things.
Well, if somebody is dead, then they can't be your rival, and they can't come back to. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. All right. Again, it's very. I love that.
Right. I'm trying to think. As far as vehicles go, yeah, they believe that. I mean, they travel on foot unless they're specifically offered a ride. Even then, it will be like, if they're offered a ride.
Can you fit 8 of us?
Can you fit 8 of us? And 2, they will personally take on the keep and maintaining of the animals that are driving them, or they will do more than their part to kind of pay their way through. They don't really deal with money. That's not really their thing. They live off of the land. What money they do get from the jobs that they receive, it goes back into their communities, and there's not too much. I had more of an aesthetic idea than an actual like solid plan as far as how they would operate. But I know they're terrifying, and you don't want to try and hit them because they can hit so much harder, faster, and then you're out. So
the Utagura. Am I saying that right?
Utagura.
The Utagura. Okay. Now I have a question. Concerning their 8-man squad dynamic. You mentioned that if they lose a member, they go back to their temple, shave their heads, and start the training process over again. Do they ever replace that member?
That's not something that I thought of. I'm thinking.
Because if it's a family dynamic, this is and you've kind of mentioned that this is the people that you're with for life. So now I'm just getting this image in my head of a character who's a member of the Utagura and is the only member left of his family. Right.
So there's this, what I wrote down as far as recruitment, which kind of will lead into that, is that, you know, obviously there are different races in Theatrim, so as far as what a child is, it's kind of give and take, but traditionally from the mind age that you would call it, of 4 and 8 is when these children are taken into that society. When they're 8 is when they are
4 to 8?
4 or 8. Yeah, 4 to 8 years old.
Wow. Okay.
What do you mean?
No, that's fine.
They're young.
Youngins.
Yes, they're taken in as youngins. They're not like taking kids off this. You know, they're either children are either said like, I don't know, maybe they're orphans or they're given to this community and they're taken in as a family. When they're 8 is when their heads are shaved and they actually begin that hard, rigorous training. And then when they graduate from their training is when they get put into that dynamic. And I really do like that idea of you're walking around and you see 6 or 7 Utagura warriors and their heads are all shaved and they're an older group. And it's just that, like, yikes, like, oof.
That's, the levels, the layers, Kat. The layers of world building and storytelling you do with this.
I definitely want to go back through and go into more of the structure and how they would operate as a team, but I do think I'll have to go back in and create a whole nother article just about the Utagura community society, how they function as a collective, and then go into what the individual troops do. There was a part on World Anvil where they talked about, under history, where they talked about historical loyalties. They don't really have a loyalty to anyone but themselves, or like within their own community. They have a strong loyalty to their family and to that to the communities that they come from. But as far as like being loyal to a country or anything other than really that family dynamic, there's not much there. It's more so just, okay, we're being called to action to perform a service, and we will, the money or the supplies that we'll receive from doing this will help support our community further, so we're going to go out and do that.
I think with the way that I wrote it, I was getting too excited because I don't have an article about Dust, the Order. So I'm almost positive the reason why I've got long blocks of text here is because I went in and just wrote down everything that I could about Dust.
Got it. And
the knights themselves. So I'll definitely have to go back and like separate what is specifically the knights in this form, and then what makes up the organization in the other form. Because not every I see that now. Not every structure, not every small group is going to have the Grand Master. The Grand Master oversees the whole umbrella.
Right.
So yeah, I get what you mean.
But yeah, that's kind of I knew I had an idea. I wasn't really able to word it exactly how I wanted, but I think that you get the idea of just scary monks.
Scary monks.
But they're nice. They're nice.
If they mean to be.
If they mean to be, as long as you're not, the one that they're after, but,
My people are nice. They're bred to not be nice.
Yeah.
They've had a hard go of it.
Hard go.
That's all I got.
That's all I got.
Cool. Thank you so much for joining us today. Let us know in the comments below something that you enjoyed about today's video, or if you have an idea that you're willing to share.
If you enjoyed today's video, please make sure to hit all those buttons that everyone else bugs you about. We'd love for you to join our lunch table.
And go check out World Anvil if you're interested.
You guys have been great. I'm Kat.
I'm Arden13. I'm still waiting on that ramen.
We'll see you next time.
Bye.